Alright, so I think I just straight up have too many thoughts, you know? And I don't know if I did that right. Dang it. Oh, what am I doing? No. Uh, no. Don't save that. Oh dear. Ooh, okay. Sure. We're not really gonna save that, hopefully. I don't know. This is very advanced. I guess we'll use blue. Maybe we can change it. Yeah, let's change it to black. Okay. So I think that it's hard to explain, but no. I think that me as a person, this is me here, not always happy. I think that I just have straight up too many thoughts. Now, that's a weird judgment. This is kind of a value judgment about myself. Why, obviously this thought here thinks that there are too many thoughts, right? It's not the only thought, it's not the only opinion. This thought over here might say, no, there's not too many thoughts. And it naturally arises when this one happens. It's almost like everything that I think about has a sort of opposite to balance it out. That kind of, if this one's here, this one will fall down to balance it out. And I don't really know why that is. I don't think everyone's like that. I think that most people have or I like to think that they have a more, I don't know why these people have such big heads, but I like to think that they have a more straightforward stream of consciousness where they don't need some balancing block all the time, or opposite kind of thought, but maybe every now and then, one comes in, but not all the time. But anyway, too many thoughts. Why would I think this? Why does this thought keep coming back to me? Well, because in meditation practices, that's something that people have talked about, and um, it's recognized as something that afflicts others as well. But one of the main reasons that I think I have too many thoughts is that they kind of paralyze me from taking any sort of action. And when I have so many thoughts, there's kind of like different levels. Like there's level one is you got some thoughts going on, but it's okay. You're fine. And it seems like a good thing. And level two, you've got more thoughts, and quite a bit at this point, but they're all there and they're all interesting and they're all kind of like, wow. But at level three, there becomes so many that you just don't know what to do. Like, they're just absolutely everywhere to the point at which it kind of fogs up everything and makes it impossible to think. It makes it impossible to focus. And that is because focusing is the act of looking very closely. This is not Japan's flag, by the way. But your focus is inherently something and not something else. You can't focus on everything at once. That's like the opposite of the meaning of focusing. If you were to focus on everything at once, it would appear to be nothing. It'd be black. It'd be white. It'd be some kind of solid color here. It would just be nothing. But the act of focusing is of picking out a certain thing to look at, a certain kind of information, and of paying attention to that. So if we had, a bunch of different colors here, this is, say, life, perhaps. There's just so much going on. These are all little streams of thought happening. And to focus means that we have to kind of, at least for a while, pick one of these or walk a certain kind of path. These are paths. But to take them all in, to take every color in, would be to take in nothing. And so the whole point of thinking, of you got your big brain, the whole, that is supposed to be a gear, that is the worst looking gear I've ever made. But the whole point of thinking is to help us focus on something more specific, and so we can follow it. Thinking is essentially Derpy Hammer. It's a tool, though. Is it not? If we were to go look at our ancient ancestors, thinking, excuse me, thinking, or whatever they did that separated them from animals. There's a mammoth or something, stereotypical, creature. What allowed us to overcome the animals with our spears and stuff is working together and thinking. And so fundamentally, thinking is a tool. But I think that where I get tripped up is that instead of using it as a tool for the sake of accomplishing a certain aim, it becomes the aim. I think for the sake of thinking, or for thinking's sake. And this, well, it's not very helpful for my goals, really. It kind of destroys everything. It's kind of like when you think too critically about everything, you don't know how to make any art, all you can do is tear it down. And that's kind of what my own brain does to itself. The problem is that when it picks a direction, it says, oh, you can't go that direction, or you shouldn't go that direction, so go this direction. And then the thought's like, no, not that one either, go back that way. And it's like, no, you still can't, that's not right. Well, this way, that way, and it's just a big knot. And so the problem is when you think too much and you don't use it as a tool, it really doesn't serve to be functional at all. At least the kind of thinking that I'm talking about. And I would call this like word think. And this is my thoughts are mostly in word. I wouldn't say they're really super deep feelings or pictures. It's more like a bunch of words floating around. So it would kind of look, that's me again. It kind of looks like, word think kind of looks like this. You've got a thought like, I shouldn't be doing this, doing X, that might be connected to like, but it's okay, cause nothing matters. Maybe it is okay. And you might think like this is connected to another idea, like is morality even real? Do I actually care? What about the shadow? What does it want? So there's all these really random, weird thoughts going up in my brain, and they conflict with each other. And the problem is that I end up identifying with them, and I kind of think that this is me or that is me, and then I just become the conflict. In essence, I'm not any specific thing, but I am the war. And the problem is I don't want to let go of this idea that I am these things. I don't want to, as I resonate with these thoughts, I don't want to admit that I'm just a passive observer and that these thoughts are kind of going by. I connect myself with them, even though I don't necessarily need to. But it brings up an interesting question of if I think that I think too much and I have too much word think going on in my head, too many words, and if I can't think for thinking's sake, then what am I supposed to do? Because that's all I've ever known, really. I mean, it seems absurd. It seems absurd to me that one would have some kind of aim that was self-generated, use their thinking tool set to get that aim, and then be happy. I think it's possible, for sure. But to me, it's more like I don't know what I want, but I use the thinking tool to think about things. Or at one point, maybe I just wanted truth, or maybe I had an aim, but I thought so much about it that now I think, well, maybe I shouldn't go after that aim. Maybe it's not right. Maybe I should go after another aim, you know? And then I think, well, maybe that's not enough either. Like, what am I really going after? And it's kind of like I'm just going after thoughts. I'm trying to figure out things that aren't there to figure out. There's endless thinking about what the right thing to do is, and it's very hard to figure out, and there really isn't a good answer, and it's very hard for me to accept the fact. And some people might disagree with this fact, but I would posit it as very close to fact that there are no right answers. Part of me still believes that deep down, maybe in the world, there's a right answer. Just, that's the world, terribly drawn, but in the world, there's a right answer waiting to be found somehow. Or perhaps within myself, like maybe I don't know it, but if I were to unearth one of the pieces on the bricks that kind of makes me, I would discover that there was some kind of truth, some kind of fixed truth about me in here that I couldn't deny. And when I have emotions, I often think there must be a good reason for me to have such an emotion. And then I try to figure out what it is, and I try to justify it, or I try to fight it. I try to do all kinds of things that don't really make sense. There's not any kind of singular unity within me, and I'm so scared of losing myself when I fail to realize that I barely even have myself at all when I do this kind of behavior, Yeah, as opposed to having a singular direction to follow. I'm pulled every which way by different feelings and different forces that are opposing each other. And I don't feel a singular self, at least not that often, not with many things. And maybe I'm asking the wrong questions, since I often ask, what's the the right answer, and that's not necessarily a thing. And I used to ask, like, what's my right answer? That the self isn't necessarily fixed, and so that's not necessarily a thing either. And then instead, we could go off of um, feelings. My feelings often feel like weather to me, and sometimes they pass quite quickly and leave me feeling rather strange because they pass by so quickly. And I feel like they should last longer, be more permanent or something, because if they were, then I would be less back and forth, people, I would to be able to take myself more seriously or something, which I probably shouldn't anyway. But you can just kind of think yourself into oblivion. Thinking doesn't seem to be the answer. Word think doesn't seem to be the answer to life's problems. But there's another kind of thinking that I have, which is different, and that is more like feeling think. And when I'm not, trying to appease the more intellectual side of myself by thinking in words and thinking about all the moral rules that are out there, or the sort of little things to know in life or to remember to do or whatever, and I quiet that down and left with feelings. And these feelings can be fickle too, which is a problem, but they are it's a little bit deeper of a way to think. It's perhaps, this is the brain here, and maybe word think would be up here. Feeling think would be more close to the primal emotional side of ourselves. Feeling think is powerful. It's an explosion of color, and it can be very scary because it doesn't necessarily make sense to the other part of the brain as to why it's happening, and it's hard to trust it. But it's so cool at the same time. It's just this explosion of energy, and I, for one, I think we should value it because it's a deep part of ourselves that we often reject. And I believe that Carl Jung himself talked about this a lot. And he's a smart guy. Now, the thing is, you have your feelings, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily know what to do about them, or if they're a right guide for action, or if you can trust them. Because there's times where I'll have feelings and then I think I can't trust them. But then I think, well, if I'm not trusting my feelings, am I not trusting myself? And when you're thinking about all that, can I Can I trust myself? Are my feelings valid? Is that more, are these things feelings in and of themselves? Kind of, but they're more specifically like word feelings, aren't they? Well, word thoughts, as I'd like to say. Word think. That's what it really kind of is. Because I think that we can have conflicting feelings, but usually it's some other part of our brain trying to fight against ourselves. Usually you have, one feeling, and then you have perhaps word thoughts that are trying to say, like, fire, emotion is bad, fire, dangerous, what if? And I used to think that these things are just another feeling that are fighting the fire feeling, but they're specifically different. They're not as deep or as passionate. It's more like the superego. It's a more rational, trying controlled part of the brain trying to tell this fire what to think or feel or do. And I don't know which side to pick. I don't know who should get the keys to my mind. I don't. That's a key. um, Maybe we should draw a better key. But I don't know how to live. In essence, I don't know who should get the keys to really pilot it, and I don't know how to create a coherent sense of self that is more than just the battle of these things. I don't know how to create some kind of singular will that could rise above all the infighting in my brain. That's me exhausted, but finally giving up to the singular will that has risen above the emotions, fighting with the words, fighting with the weird in between. I'd like to have some sort of unity to my sense of being, but I value my sense of being as being one of conflict. So I still value the self, even the parts of it that fight amongst itself, And I don't know what I want or if there is anything that I want or I am. I think that it may all just be kind of a lot of hullabaloo. And once you realize that, then you start feeling a bit passionless about things, and you want to connect with a sense of self. And the only sense of self you can really know is that deeper, primal, fiery sense of self, I guess. It's just, I represent it as a fire because it's emotional. And so I've been leaning towards that, but obviously you can't have that entirely for everything. It's fickle as well, and it's not always good to others. You might feel things that are bad. But I'd say one of the big questions right now that is going to ring around for a long time is, can I trust my feelings? Can I trust myself? Am I my feelings? And these thoughts are cool and fun, but a lot of times they don't get you that far, and you can feel more real, I would argue, even if it's less rational or whatever. It's a bit more real sometimes when we can turn off the words for a bit. So maybe feelings really are a very important part of our deepest selves, because they feel more real, and feeling is all we really have. So anyway, this basically yielded nothing, but that's what I'm trying to get at, is that my mind just thinks like this all the time and yields nothing. But this is what I do every second of every day, pretty much.